This is Michael Emery with TVOI News, and we're here in Twin Falls with a debate on the refugees. There's so many different issues and problems on both sides of the fence. To me, I think that really it boils down to the funding, the monies. What would be the most responsible thing to do? Would it be to potentially take the dollars that are going to the refugees and helping them in their areas and providing security? Or is it to help the foundations with 60 to 80% administrative costs? It's really a kind of a debate on an issue, but the simple fact of the matter is I think the citizens are looking for some response from their politicians, that they'd like to have a choice of how many people are brought in, who they are, and really have some responsibility. So let's see what's going on, and we'll start interviewing people. Thanks.
Take note that no one on the panel tonight is a policymaker. In inviting our panelists to participate, we were looking for those who had the experiences from different organizations that could answer your questions. Each panelist has been asked to leave their opinions of the program on the sideline and focus on the questions at hand. Let's meet our panelists. We'll have each of them introduce themselves and how they work with the refugee program. Mr. Bartlett, let's begin with you.
Sure, my name is Larry Bartlett. I'm the director of the Refugee Resettlement Program at the U.S. Department of State.
My name is Ezra Osama. I'm the CSI Refugee Programs Director.
I'm Ken Toda, and I work for the Office of Refugee Resettlement at the Administration for Children and Families, Department of Health and Human Services. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Brian Pike. I'm the Deputy City Manager of Public Safety for Twin Falls.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Coates. I'm a family medicine physician here, working at the St. Luke's Physician Center as a primary care physician.
Hi, I'm Wiley Dobbs, the Superintendent of Twin Falls School District.
I'm Mike Mason, the Vice President of Administration for the College of Southern Idaho.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. The rest of this evening will go like this. We've asked Larry Bartlett, Ken Toda, and Zeze Raswama to provide a brief presentation on the current program as a baseline. Following their brief remarks, we'll proceed with presenting your questions. When you entered the auditorium tonight, you were given a blue card. If you have a question to ask, write it on the card and hold it up. One of our student volunteers from the National Honor Society at Twin Falls High School will come around and collect the cards. Matt Christensen, editor of the Time News, will moderate tonight's program and ask the questions to the panelists. He'll be assisted by Allison Smith, managing editor of the Times News, to organize your questions by topic. We also solicited questions from the community, and we'll include these questions in tonight's forum as time permits. We want to answer as many questions as possible in a reasonable amount of time tonight, and this is the reason we selected this format over having an open microphone. None of our panelists have been provided these questions in advance, and Matt has the right to ask follow-up questions and clarifying questions as well. You were also given a yellow feedback card, and we'd appreciate hearing your comments on tonight's forum. You can hand them into one of our student volunteers at the door when you leave. Mr. Bartlett, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come to Twin Falls. We've actually spent the day meeting with various people in Twin Falls and looking at some of the refugee program. So again, it's really an honor to be here. I wanted to set the context for the program nationally and somewhat internationally, and then bring it back down to the level of Twin Falls, which is why we're here tonight. So first of all, there's about 20 million refugees in the world today. These are people who've been forced to flee their countries. They've not willingly left. They're not economic migrants. They're people who are in many ways displaced because of war and because of personal and religious persecution. And these are the people that we here in Twin Falls and certainly in Washington. I know one of the issues that people want to talk about is, why is resettlement important? Why don't people just go home? Well, we know in a place like Syria that's not possible. This war has been going on for 5 years. Half of the country of Syria has been displaced. Everybody's seen the tragedies that are happening in the Mediterranean, but these tragedies are individual and they're very real, and they're families, they're not terrorists, they're people who are fleeing terrorism. So there's about 4 million Syrians who are outside of their country today. There's another 8 million who are inside their country and cannot live in their house or live in their village. That's half of Syria. Half of Syria has been displaced. What's our responsibility as a country? We're not going to solve the war in Syria by resettlement. We're not foolish enough to think that that would be the case. But we know that as a country that has humanitarian values, that has strong convictions about helping other people, that we can play some role. So one of the roles that we play is that we provide funding to the region, to places like Turkey, to places like Jordan, to help refugees shelter in place. These are people who actually want to go home, and they're waiting to go home. There's 2 million people, 2 million refugees in Turkey who would like to go home. But among those 2 million, there are people who can't, even in Turkey, be protected. Husbands have been killed, people have medical needs, people have been victimized, they're victims of torture, and these are the people that we seek to help through resettlement. And this country has a very proud tradition since the beginning of its founding, when our forefathers came on the Mayflower, escaping religious persecution, of welcoming others, welcoming people who've been unfortunate and helping them find a new home. So that's what this program is about. This year we're going to bring about 70,000 refugees to our country. They're going to arrive in about 173 cities, of which Twin Falls is one. We have 304 organizations working with them. So for example, in Boise there are 3 organizations, in Twin Falls there's one. Refugees are resettled to 48 states, so it's a national program. That's intentional. It's not a burden to resettle a refugee, but in many ways it's a blessing. And refugees bring as much to a community as they might receive. So this next year, people might have heard, we're going to be upping our program to 85,000 refugees. That will include about 10,000 Syrians. It's important to note that Syrian refugees are now the largest single refugee population in the world. So it's not surprising that we would try to assist those people who have fled terrorists. We have a very intentional program. I know that some of the concern about the program is how do we choose them and how do we screen them? And I just want to take a moment on that, and perhaps there'll be questions about it afterwards. But we work with UNHCR, which is the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. It's the worldwide organization that serves refugees. It's done, the good news about this program is that the UN is funded by a number of countries. This is not just a responsibility the United States takes on to fund this operation, but many countries share this funding opportunity, this obligation. The UN provides cases to us they think are particularly vulnerable. They're the ones who are operating camps. They're the ones who are working with refugees in cities like Amman, Jordan, and they understand who's vulnerable. They provide those referrals to us and we take a look at them. We don't accept all of them, but we accept many of them. And then we, on the State Department side and the Department of Homeland Security, have the responsibility to interview them, to take their refugee story, to make sure that they are who they say they are. We do extensive background checks on them. Some refugees come with a lot of documentation. Iraqis and Syrians have identity cards from their country, they have passports. Some refugees flee with nothing because they are in such a hurry that they can take nothing with them. But it's still our responsibility to understand who we're talking to. The Department of Homeland Security has the final responsibility for interviewing the refugee. This is not done through a contractor. It's not done through a foreign national. It's done by an American citizen who's a Department of Homeland Security employee who flies overseas and who will interview a refugee for 2 to 3 hours to make sure that we understand who that person is that we're talking to, make sure that it's safe for us to bring them to the United States, and to make sure they qualify for this program. And this is not an immigration program. We're not looking for workers. We're not looking for economic migrants. We're looking for refugees. We're looking for people who really suffered persecution and people that we can help by bringing them to a new life. And so that's the Department of Homeland Security's ultimate responsibility in this program. Part of this process is making sure that security checks are done as thoroughly as possible. We have at least 6 intelligence agencies in Washington that are doing this vetting. It's not done by State Department, it's not even done by DHS. It's done by professional intelligence agencies. And they are running both biographic information, so names and dates of birth, addresses, through databases, and they're also doing biometric checks. So everybody is fingerprinted. They are run through 3 different databases, including Department of Defense, to make sure that people will not cause harm to this country. Once DHS is assured that these people are both refugees and it's safe, then we will arrange an orientation overseas for them to help with their initial days of resettlement. We make sure that people have a medical and screening to make sure mostly that they will not import diseases to the United States. So we really want to make sure that communities are not going to be in any way jeopardized by this resettlement. And then at that point in time, institutions like CSI would receive the refugee. We have arranged travel for them. There's housing that is provided locally with federal funding. And then Health and Human Services would provide additional support to really help with the first months of adjustment. I think what's important to know, and I know this program has been criticized, let's say by both people who are very strong supporters as well as people who are opponents, that we either provide too much funding or not enough funding. And what I can tell you is that the way this program was designed by Congress in 1980 is one of early self-sufficiency. So refugees are not only expected to get jobs early on, but they must get jobs early on because the federal support is limited. And so one of the responsibilities of CSI and our other local organizations is to make sure that people have an opportunity to adjust, but they do it quickly. And refugees, and there may be some in the audience tonight, I think will tell you, they can't always wait for the perfect job. They have to find a job early on to help start paying the rent. Because what we have done as Americans is we've given people an opportunity to have a new life, but the expectation that we have is those people will take that opportunity and make something of it for themselves. And it's really I'm very proud to be a director of this program and see how many people are actually successful in it, because it's a highly successful program. You know, refugees have been coming to Twin Falls for 30 years and have really become part of the fabric of this community. So with that, I will turn the microphone over to Ken.
Is it working? I got to talk louder. There we go. Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I do want to thank the Times News, certainly, and the delegation for the invitation. I have to say I've long wanted to come to Idaho. I didn't really expect to be here in front of 1,000 people tonight when I was thinking about that, but certainly a pleasure to be here. So our program is the Office of Refugee Resettlement, and really the main objective of the program is really to provide ongoing and initial assistance to refugees that are resettled into the country, and certainly into Twin Falls or Boise in Idaho. And much of our programs and services are really designed around, as Larry said, really early self-sufficiency. We want to make sure that the refugees have a good start and really services to help them become self-sufficient as soon as possible. The funding that we do provide in terms of some initial cash and medical assistance is time limited, and that's only for 8 months. So the goal is to really help provide orientation, help provide really employment-related ESL and other employment-related services to really help refugees become employed within that period of time and really on a path to self-sufficiency, and really to help them rebuild their lives. Obviously, they're coming from camp situations and trauma in war-torn countries, and our program is really there to help them build a new start and really help bring their hope back to them, because after years in the settings that I've been, it's really about starting a new beginning. And I know that after meeting a lot of the folks here in Twin Falls, I think many refugees certainly over the years and recently have really been provided a really really successful beginning. The employment here is very, very strong, and the community, I think, has really provided great services and support. So I know you probably have a lot of questions sort of about the program, and many times there are a number of players, and the program I know probably seems kind of complicated, and all of a sudden you're seeing the word refugee on the news nightly and really trying to figure out what does that mean. And so I'm hoping that we'll have the opportunity to maybe answer some questions to really help you have a better understanding of the program. I'm very, very proud to work as part of this program. It helps thousands of people who really have no other place to run, and the U.S. provides a great opportunity for them to rebuild their lives. So hopefully we can help you understand what this program means to certainly us who work in it, but really I think the country as a whole. So thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. It means a lot for us and a lot for our community to be able to give out true information about our program. I would like to start with defining what a refugee is. First of all, a refugee, I think a refugee is a human being just like you and me. These refugees who fled their home country in fear of persecution for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group or political opinion. This type of persecution happen in forms of serious atrocities, in forms of severe violation of human rights, and I'll give a few examples such as detention of individuals without a charge or a trial for an extended period of time, genocide, torture, or even overwhelming discrimination. So therefore, the refugees that we bring here in Twin Falls are victims, they are survivors of the worst atrocities that you can think of, atrocities against humanity. In Twin Falls, we receive only refugees that have been through the whole process that Larry just explained, and these are refugees that are legal residents, just like you and me in this city or in this country or in this state. These are refugees that are allowed to work, just like you and me. They are hard-working people, just like you and me, and they're trying so hard to improve their lives. Short after arrival, refugees in this state or in this city, they get a job fast. And our record shows that refugees that get their first job within 2.5 months after arrival, if they were employable, meaning if they did not have issues to prevent them from employment, then they'll get a job after 2.5 months. Now, if we have to work on other barriers to try to resolve those barriers that are preventing them from employment, then the average is 5.5 months after arrival. So after that, then they start paying taxes just like you. And let us take a moment and think about what if we are forced to leave our homes, to leave our spouses, to leave our parents, and leave our belongings behind, and you find yourself in one of our neighboring countries. What is that feel? What are you going to feel if that happens to us? You know, if it happens to people in other countries, that may happen to us too. We are a part of this global community as well. It means that we will have fear of the unknown, we'll be shocked, we'll be depressed, we'll have anger, we'll have hope mingled with disappointment, and we'll be helpless, powerless. We won't have any power of trying to resolve our issues. We'll struggle to meet our survival needs, and we'll be confused. and probably will end up in a refugee camps. Now, these refugee camps, in the process of escaping, these refugees go through difficult times, and serious difficult times, I mean, and many of them die during that escaping process. Now, if there is, many of them actually, if they are lucky enough to survive that, then they find themselves in refugee camps, and they live in these refugee camps not for 1 day or 2. They live in refugee camps at least 5 years before they come here to the US. They live, some of them 10 years, some of them 15 years, and some of them actually were born in the refugee camps and come here to the US as an adult. There is 3 possible solutions that's a problem that needs to be addressed by the global community, and they came up with 3 solutions. The first one is to help them go back to their countries if the problems are resolved, but these people wait for years and end up waiting forever for the solution to happen. Or the second solution is to resettle them in their host countries, meaning countries that have all these refugee camps. That is impossible because some of these countries are not even capable, or they don't have enough resources to take care of their own people. Asking them to take more refugees, then it's asking them that something that they are not able to do. And the third solution is the resettlement of refugees. And we are grateful to have this program in the US, as they reported to us that we are going to receive 70,000 refugees in the US. In Twin Falls, we resettle 300 refugees a year. Last year we resettled 300, and this year we are going to resettle 300 as well. Now, in the past 5 years, we resettled a total of 1,200 refugees, and I'll give you the numbers from each nationality. We resettled 335 refugees from Bhutan, 341 refugees from Africa, from specifically 3 countries, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Eritrea, and Sudan. And we also resettled 206 refugees from Burma, 195 refugees from Iraq, and 58 refugees from Iran, and 65 refugees from Afghanistan. These are the numbers of refugees that will be settled in countries for the past 5 years. Now, let me talk about the assistance that we provide to the refugees as they come to Twin Falls. We have financial assistance is a big, and that's where we start. As we start spending money before refugee arrives by finding a safe and affordable housing for them. The reception and placement program, it's a program that refugees will use for about 90 days, but in reality, within 30 days, the money that is allocated for those services are gone. And I'll give you an example. For example, for one refugee, we get $1,125 per refugee. Now, if we have a single refugee, that money is supposed to pay the deposit, supposed to pay first month rent and second month rent. For a single person, housing is very challenging because in our community, that would be $400 a month, which is also the deposit. So that's $800 that is spent out of the $1,125 even before arrival. Then from this same account, we provide furnishing. We have to furnish their homes before arrival, which this will include kitchen items, tables, beddings, and cleaning supplies and all of that. So that usually, as I said, it's a program designed for 3 months, but we usually spend the money within 30 days. There's another financial assistance that refugees are eligible for after the 30 days. And we have 2 of them. The refugee will have a choice of choosing which one. I will explain both programs. The first one is a match grant program, which is designed for refugees that are available and able to work immediately after arrival. It's a program that most of our refugees, I would say, they love that program because in Twin Falls we have so many jobs for them, and some of refugees in this program get jobs within their first 30 days. It provides $200 for each adult per month, and then if there's kids in the household, then it would be $40 per kid per month. And that, and in addition to that, we do pay their rent and their utilities for 2 additional months. So the first program will pay rent and utilities for 2 months, and then we'll pay 2 additional months from this program, and after that, refugees are expected to get a job and be self-sufficient and move on with that responsibility of paying their own bills. If they get a job, we have the bonuses that we give them after 120 days after arrival. If they are employed at that point, we give them $150 as a bonus. And if they are employed 180 days after arrival, then we give them another $150, and that will be it. And that, at that point, we will close the financial support, but we still have services that we provide to them, such as case management and employment services if they need them, medical services if they need medical services as well. The second program is it's a cash assistance that goes up to 8 months, but in reality, after they get a job, then that program stops after 2 months. Let's say after 30 days, if someone gets a job in month 2, then we will count 2 months after they get a job, and then we'll close the financial assistance. Most of our refugees don't get all 8 months because they get a job fast, and we'll give them 2 months transition so that they can learn how to budget and be responsible for their bills after that. And I'll give you an example. A family of 1, if it's a case of 1 person, it's $382 per month, and that is all they get. They have to pay rent and utilities out of that. So as I said, if rent is $400, then we give them $382, so they don't have any choice, basically, is to get a job fast and start contributing to our community. We also provide transportation for our refugees to and from employment, to and from medical appointments, to and from our ESL program, and to and from some other important appointments that refugees may have, as well as providing interpreters to assist us with the communication with them. We also provide cultural orientations and community orientations to help them know what is this community, to know what are the good about our community, and we do our best to try to do those community services to help our refugees. As I said, the goal that we have here is to help them become self-sufficient. And it's also, the second goal is to help them fully integrated in our community in a very short period of time. That is our two main goals that we have. Now, we can't do this, as I just explained how much we get and how much we spend on refugees. It is not possible for us to be successful if we don't have the support from the community. CSI refugee programs has been successful for many years because of the dedication and generosity of many of you in this room today. I've seen volunteers and supporters find themselves performing and fulfilling tasks to help our refugees. And I've also seen groups of refugees, a group of community members come together to be involved in our refugee events. And all of that is really appreciated by so many of our refugees. Your donations, your cash donations that you give us, the refugees are appreciative to that, and that makes a big difference in their successes. Now, let me stop here, and hopefully we'll be able to answer so many of your questions.
Thanks a lot, Zay. I'm Matt Christensen. I'm the editor of the Times News. I think before we get into the question and answer, put on the panel really quick and introduce the rest of the folks. You want to start, Mr. Pike?
We already did.
Oh, we did? Oh, see? I got to start paying better attention. Well, I'm working through about 900 cards of questions here. Lucky for us, a lot of them have been are duplicates, and so I want to start with one question that's been asked many, many times here, and I'll phrase it like this. There have been cases, documented cases, notable ones of refugees who have come through the program, been screened, come to the country, and then committed horrific crimes. Does that not expose flaws in the system? And if so, why should Twin Falls have to expose itself to potential acts of terror?
So let me start with security screening, because I think this answer has two components. One is a terrorist component, and I know people have fears about terrorists. We all have fears about terrorists. And then I think maybe the law enforcement side, which is the second piece. So I think I covered a little bit at the beginning, but I want to assure people that the security screening that's done is not only lengthy, but it is deep. And there was an incident of 2 Iraqis who were arrested in Kentucky about 5 years ago. And because of that incident, additional security check was put into place. And 2 different agencies were given responsibility to do additional vetting against databases. And so that process of trying to understand how do we vet refugees effectively continues. It's an ongoing responsibility, and it will never end. It will, I think any program, it would be false for us to say the program has no risk, because I think everything in life has risk. But I can tell you, there is no stone that will be unturned in trying to make sure that this program is as risk-free as possible.
I'm going to have to move a little bit. If you know me, I think you'll understand. I worked really hard on this. I know this is a serious issue, and I just want to take a quick moment to say I was really proud. I stepped out in the lobby and I saw the line going around the building. And being a resident of the Magic Valley for my entire life, I was actually very proud that you take the time out to come out tonight and to actually hear some information that we have for you. So when we look at crime, you have to understand, so I started my career in 1994 with the Twin Falls Police Department. I worked 20 years in law enforcement serving this community, and the last 4 years of that as the Twin Falls Police Chief. And in all my times, I have a short answer and a long answer for this. In all my times,
the short one, Brian. Give us the short one.
Well, it's a little complicated. The short answer is, in my 20-year career, now I can only speak locally, all right? So my perspective is at the local level, right here in the Magic Valley. At the local level, I can say the impact the refugees have had on the Twin Falls Police Department, on our ability to deliver service, is really insignificant. What I did is I asked the state of Idaho to run some reports for me. And all this information I have available. If anyone would like a copy of this, I'd be more than happy to make that arrangement for you. But when you look at the numbers really tell a story. It's hard to argue with the numbers. So just let me give you a for instance. When you think about crime in Twin Falls, I think about significant crimes. In law enforcement, we call these Group A offenses. So these are things like assault, burglary, rape, and things like that. Well, if I look at aggravated assault in 2014, so this is once again a local perspective. This is what we deal with. These are our numbers. 2014, 88.46%, so almost 88% of all the crimes that we dealt with related, all the arrests that we made related to aggravated assault were classified by the state by the race white. So in Idaho, there are 5 classifications of race: American Indian, white, black, Asian Pacific Islander, and unknown. In the category of white, ethnicity is either Hispanic or non-Hispanic. Those are the only categories that we have, and that's true of the federal government. 88% of our crime, all of our arrests related to aggravated assault, 88%. Blacks represented 11% in our refugee population, which is somewhat difficult because when we are dealing with people, you have to understand our perspective. It's not about someone's color of skin. It's not about their religious affiliation. It's about delivering, making sure that they have equal treatment under the eyes of the law. But in this category, 0%. And that's pretty consistent. So honestly, sorry, Matt, that was a long answer. But
You got a round of applause, so they liked it.
I do have the data, and if anyone is interested, I'd be more than happy to present you with this. This is all available on the State of Idaho website. But we asked the state to, and this is something that I think is important. This is not the type of information that your police department looks at. Like I said, we don't look at color of skin, we don't look at race, we don't look at gender. We're about delivering service to people in some of their most difficult time of need. But I have this information available, and you will find this to be consistent throughout the information I have. Overall, the impact really is significant.
Thank you. I have a whole stack of questions here that relates to CSI's relationship with the refugee program. So, Mr. Mason, I'm going to direct some of these questions toward you. I'll ask a general one. Can you just explain what exactly is the relationship CSI has with the refugee program, and then talk about the specifics financially of how that relationship works?
Well, CSI is the grantee for the refugee program. And essentially that means that our federal tax ID number is associated to every grant and every dollar that the refugee program gets. We get about $1.3 million in federal money for the program. And of that, CSI takes an administrative cost of between $40,000 and $50,000 a year. So essentially, we use a fund accounting system. There is no state dollars, there are no property tax dollars, there are no CSI dollars, in that fund stands isolated by itself. Over time, the last 20 years, the Refugee Center was able to build up a fund balance from some of the administrative funds, a minor amount each year, and we were able to purchase the building they're in. Now, that covered the purchase price and part of the remodel cost. The remainder was covered by our plant facility fund, where we are charging the Refugee Center $30,000 a year in rent. So in about 44 months, that building, over $600,000 building, will be free and clear and belong to the College of Southern Idaho. There's always a question about administrative costs about what those really include. So with the Refugee Center, we do the payroll and benefit administration, we do the accounting for them, we provide an audit, and we provide insurance. So the real question to me is how much of those costs would be avoided if we didn't have the Refugee Center? I called our insurance company, they said, well, insurance would be about $3,200 a year. If we talk to our accountants, they say, well, we're really not going to reduce the price of your audits because that $80 million, $1 million, not a major federal program, that wouldn't have impact. So I really think that the Refugee Center does pay its fair share, and I think financially that we would not be as well off without it as we are with it.
I think we can go down the line here because we also have a pretty hefty stack of questions about some of the social impacts and financial impacts outside of the actual campus itself. And one of those areas is definitely what impact the refugee population is having on local schools. So Dr. Dobbs, can you explain a little bit about how many refugee students are in the Twin Falls School District right now, and financially, has the district had to do anything special to accommodate those students?
Thanks, man. Yes, and I have some slides that I think will help. When I talk numbers, or when someone talks numbers to me, if there isn't a visual, I get lost pretty easily. So this is for my benefit if you're not like that. As superintendent, my job is, and our employees in our school district, our job is to educate the kids that arrive at our doorstep. We take them and teach them regardless of where they come from. In fact, we have a motto, a saying, and it's, you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit. And we stick by that. Let's talk, the question really revolves around numbers, so let's talk numbers. As you can see on the left side, this is from the 2014-2015 school year, okay? So we started a new school year, but this has all the numbers from last year. And last year, the total number of students that we ended up with at the end of the school year were 8,856, which is represented by the light blue in the circle on the left. Of those 8,856 students, 225 were refugee students. So, and these students fall into different categories, so I'll explain those. 152 of the students came to us and were put in our Newcomers Center. I'll talk a little bit more about that if there are questions around it, but we have a Newcomers Center at Lincoln Elementary School and a Newcomers Center at Robert Stewart Middle School. So the secondary kids go to Robert Stewart, the elementary kids go to Lincoln. And they show up at our doorstep, and instead of just placing them immediately in a classroom, we have them go to the Newcomer Center. And we assess their skills and their abilities, particularly with English. Some of the students come with very high levels of English skills, and so they don't stay in the Newcomer Center very long. Others spend upwards of 6 or 7 months in the Newcomer Center acquiring the skills, getting those survival skills that they'll need before we place them in the regular classroom. You can see that 19 of the students at the end of the school year were still enrolled at the Newcomer Center. The 152 represents Newcomer Center students who transition throughout the year into a regular classroom. Then you can see 21 students, when they came to us and we assessed their abilities, we put them right immediately in a regular classroom. They were ready to go. 8 of the students are immigrants not through the refugee program. And then refugees who moved out of the Twin Falls School District during that time period, there were 25 of those. The next slide, if you can turn to the next slide, our school district is the 8th largest school district in the state of Idaho. We operate on a yearly budget of approximately $45 million, and that's represented by the light blue circle on the left. We receive local, state, and federal money to make up that total. This slide shows how much money we receive specifically to help fund our refugee program. Of that $45 million, 0.42% is with the refugee funds that we receive. We receive a Refugee School Impact Grant for $41,500. We get a Title III emergency immigrant amount from the state and federal government, $46,594. And then we get state limited English proficiency, or LEP, money at $103,000. Now this pays for our 2 newcomer centers. It pays for the co-teaching model at Canyon Ridge. Our refugee students go to Canyon Ridge. We have special programs throughout the district. Rather than having a refugee center or a newcomer center at every school, we can't afford that. So we harness our power. We put the program at Lincoln for elementary kids, at Robert Stewart for middle school kids, and then at Canyon Ridge for high school kids, so that we can utilize our funding better, and we bus the kids there if need be. So we have a co-teaching model. That's where the ELL teacher is working in the classroom with the regular teacher in the classroom. So they team up to help the kids. Also, a lot of times you'll see kids paired up. A student who has been in the country longer will be paired up with a student who is just getting into the regular classroom, and they help each other. That's kind of neat to see. And then supporting personnel training, the supplies, all that funding helps with that. The next slide shows you the amount of money, the additional costs that we bear in the Twin Falls School District. There is some additional funding that we provide from our general fund. And it's to the amount of about 0.13% of that $45 million. We use $49,183 to pay for a teacher, and then we have a little over $9,000 to help pay for a teacher's aide or a paraeducator. Now, having said that, our refugee students also help us with money that we get from the state for their attendance. By attending school, they also generate funds. So truly, this comes out to a wash as far as how much we spend in the Twin Falls School District and how much we get. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Just as a follow-up, we had several questions asked about how students who are refugees are assimilating in the classrooms. Are they making friends? Are they getting along? Are they learning at the same pace as other students? Can you talk about that a little bit?
I probably should have anticipated that question. It's a very good one. You know what we use our money for, roughly speaking, as I explained. The big question is, how are we doing? What kind of success are we seeing with our students? The Twin Falls School District has been recognized as a model district for the services we provide to refugee students. In 2013, the state of Idaho named the Twin Falls School District the Migrant and the ELL, or English Language Learner, Programs of the Year. Thank you. Canyon Ridge High School has been recognized for its co-teaching model that helps English language learners get the extra support in their content area classes. Approximately, it's a little more than 95% of our students, our refugee students, either graduate with us, or in some cases they time out. Say they arrive to us as 16-year-old kids. And they go through our program and they accumulate some credits, but they turn 18 and they're done. Over 95% of the students, the refugee students that we have in the Twin Falls School District, either graduate with us or go on to get a GED or an HSE. So we're very proud of that too.
Thanks.
Any others?
Well, maybe in a minute, but Dr. Coates hasn't had
save myself a lot.
Yeah. Dr. Coates hasn't had a chance to talk yet, and there are several questions here about healthcare in relation to our refugee population. Can you talk a little bit about what screening, if any, is being done medically to ensure that refugees aren't bringing diseases into our community? And then once those folks are here, what sort of health care do they receive and how does it get paid for?
What a great question, so thank you for the opportunity to answer that. Just a little background on me, a little more background at least. I've been practicing here for 7 years. I continue to see brand new refugee patients as they come in. I have the opportunity to be an attending physician for our rural training track, which is a family medicine residency. These are new physicians who are training to become family medicine physicians. When they have family medicine clinics in Twin Falls, it's through my personal clinic, and the majority of their patients are refugees. So I have a lot of experience with new refugees, as well as what it's like to take care of them as they transition. I personally have a lot of refugee patients and American citizens who came here as refugees and are now have lived here for years, decades, and generations. So I hope to represent the healthcare aspect well. Just to talk through the process quickly, there are 600, they're called panel physicians, 600 panel physicians across the entire world, hired by our consulates through the State Department, or the Department of State. The panel physicians are the only physicians who can certify whether a refugee is healthy enough to travel to the United States. And we don't just stop there. Those panel physicians are not allowed to have any leeway in their medical decision making. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, also known as the CDC, has a protocol-based set of guidelines that panel physicians have to use. And so that if you have a panel physician saying that a patient is quote-unquote cleared to be able to travel here, you know that they're meeting the highest standards of care to ensure the safety of our population. Once a refugee has been cleared by a panel physician to travel here, our South Central Public Health District has visibility into the patient's background, their diagnoses. If someone has a condition for which they need to be seen immediately, when they land, they're seen almost immediately. It's incredible here. I really want to just say that we're lucky. We have such a tremendous such a tremendous public health district here. Once the refugees land, they're seen by the South Central Public Health District to ensure that everything was taken care of, even though we have a robust system in place to make sure that patients are screened before they come onto our shores. Once they are seen by our South Central Public Health District and quote-unquote cleared, they're actually transitioned into our healthcare system to establish care and start for the routine health care. What I would say about our South Central Public Health District in particular, it's very rare for me as a primary care physician to have a brand new refugee who hasn't had full immunizations. In fact, I don't know that I've ever had it. And we've seen a lot of refugees come through. Additionally, there are a lot of prophylactic medicines given from refugees from various parts of the world, whether they have a communicable disease or not, just to ensure the safety of our population. I would say that I feel more than comfortable. I personally am the one who are interacting with these patients as their first contact with healthcare, and I feel completely safe from a communicable disease standpoint.
And who's writing the checks to you for those visits?
Great question. As Zay hinted at it, they have a very short period of time on Medicaid to be able to have health insurance coverage. And as you can imagine, just imagine meeting a new physician for the first time and we're asking them some very personal questions. It can take time to help them open up and get to a point where they feel comfortable talking with us. But those first 6 months are Medicaid, and after that, we're expecting them to be working and obtaining health care coverage based upon their employment status.
Sure. Somebody brings up a good point that I hadn't thought of at all in this debate, and that's that a lot of these refugees are coming from countries where they've experienced things that are unimaginable to most of us. And so perhaps they not only have physical ailments, but have undergone extreme mental stresses. What sort of mental health care is available for those refugees, especially in a community like this where we're struggling with our own mental health resources here?
What a great question. If you ask any primary care physician in probably Idaho, and I'm kind of looking at one right now over there too, we'd probably tell you that the vast majority of mental health care actually happens in primary care settings because there's such a shortage. I would say the same for our refugee population. The vast majority of our mental health care that we're providing is actually provided in the primary care setting. It's only in unique and a small percentage of the population are we referring into our mental health colleagues, and it's for the same reason that it's hard to get anybody into our mental health colleagues. It's an extreme shortage.
Thanks. I want to step back a little bit now and go back to Mr. Bartlett or Mr. Toda and talk a little bit about the process again for once refugees do come into this country. At what point does someone determine where they go, who gets in? Can you talk a little bit about how that process works? Because I think that's been a focus of a lot of the veterans here in our parts tonight too.
Sure. Would you like me to say that we send everybody to Twin Falls?
I think it depends on which side of the room you're sitting.
There's a few empty seats we'd like to fill up with refugees. Who, by the way, and this is not a joke, become taxpayers, become legal permanent residents. Become citizens. So the answer of how, it's not very scientific how we decide where refugees go. Right now, this program has existed since 1975. We have resettled large populations. Those populations are shifting. So Burmese, on the downturn, Bhutanese, who've been in Nepal, and I know that Bhutanese have been resettled here. These people, by the way, were not allowed to go back to their country for 15 years. They were, for all intents and purposes, ethnically cleansed from their kingdom of Bhutan. So, these are the populations, and so now we're shifting. We've got Iraqis, many of them have worked for us. I know you've got Afghans I saw on the slide. I can assure you most of those Afghans who come here have worked for the U.S. military in Afghanistan and have helped our men and women. So what we do is we look at first of all, where people have relatives. So if an Iraqi who's come to this community 5 years ago has family members that are still in Jordan, still in Turkey, still in Iraq, and they become eligible for this program, we reunite them. So one of the foundational principles of this country in this program is family reunification. We don't split apart families, we bring them back together. And so 60% of the refugees these days join a family member or join somebody else they know. And that not only keeps families together, but it also helps them transition to a better life in the United States, because that's a support mechanism that all of us can appreciate. So family reunification is one piece. The second piece is that the local organization has the linguistic ability to serve the refugee. So they can't ask to resettle an Arabic-speaking refugee if they don't have Arabic language translation abilities, because when people arrive, they need initial services in translation. So that's one component. The other place, and frankly, all of our sites have affordable housing. All of our sites have employment. They wouldn't be sites if they didn't. And so that is kind of across the United States, a core principle of this. And then I think maybe the last component is, this is a program, and we were talking to some dairy farmers today, and I'm not sure if they're here, but I was intrigued. I know I'm not a dairy farmer, you will know this. Cows produce milk 24/7, right? Okay, duh. But we also want to, kind of like a dairy farmer has to make sure that they're serving the needs of their cows by milking. We need to make sure that this network of resettlement agencies has kind of a steady throughput. We operate this program almost 365 days a year. And we're not going to bring everybody to Twin Falls in October and then not bring anybody else for the rest of the year, because the resettlement agency and the other service providers need to do this in a gradual, measured approach.
Larry, I'm going to stop you right there.
Okay.
There are not going to be 300 Syrians getting off a bus here on October 1st.
Yeah, that's not happening. So, but it really is important that we have a steady throughput. We don't want to overwhelm anybody at any one time. You know, a school wouldn't appreciate having a whole 100 people just show up on the doorstep the next day. So we do try to spread refugees around throughout the country. And so more and more you will see just that will also be true in Twin Falls.
Thanks. A word we've heard over and over again this summer is Sharia, and I think a lot of people are worried about refugees bringing values to this community that don't jive with traditional Southern Idaho values, particularly when it comes to refugees who may be of a religion that's not as widely practiced here as it is in the countries where they're coming from. Why should Twin Falls take in people that might not necessarily share the values that are traditionally here and that have been practiced here for years and years?
So I'll start, but maybe somebody else wants to chime in. First of all, I got to tell you, refugees are no different than you and me. Number one, they want to be alive. They may have a different religion, and I frankly may have a different religion than you, and the person over there may have a different religion. But number one, this is a country of religious tolerance. So, you know, the fact, I mean, there have been Muslims coming to Twin Falls for perhaps 30 years. And I can tell you, as somebody who lives in Washington, and I know that's not a great thing for some people to say, but I'm not afraid to say that. This country is a country of law, and we have a court system, we have a judicial system, we have a policing system. We're not going down the track of Sharia law. And we have a very strong core fundamental values, you know, embraced in the Constitution, and that's not changing. So, you know, the people that are coming here are people who fled something horrible. They come with some mental health trauma. They frankly just want to be safe. And they want their kids to have a better life than they had. They're going to have a better life than they had last year before they got here, but their kids are going to have a better life than they did. And their kids' kids perhaps even better than that. So frankly, I think that's the American story. And refugees appreciate it. So I don't know if on any other side there's comments here.
I'd like also to add that many of our refugees that we resettle here from those areas where people are claiming that there is Sharia laws are refugees that came to the U.S. with a special visa because they worked for the U.S. government.
What about Dearborn, Michigan? What about Dearborn, Michigan?
Hey, we're going to go through all the questions. You get a room this large, there's always going to be a troublemaker. So let's be quiet and let the panelists go through the questions. Be patient. We're going to get to as many as we can. The floor is yours.
Yes, and most of them are people that understand the law here because they've been with our military, with the U.S. government for a long time, and the government knows them better than they know themselves as well. And I've seen some of them that are more, I would say that their patriotism is more than some of the American-born that I've seen on TV in recent years.
Another question that we hear again and again is why don't local elected officials or the cities themselves have more control in determining who ends up in their communities? Can anybody address that question?
Do I get all the hard questions? Okay. So this is a federal program. It's run by the federal government. It uses federal taxpayer dollars. This is a program that was set up by Congress in 1980, and it is as your elected officials, if you voted in 1980, devised for us. We are the stewards of this program at the federal level. Our job is to make sure that the tax dollars are used wisely. We work with local communities. Communities certainly have a say in what happens. We were having discussions this morning and throughout the day. We would not bring refugees to any city in the United States that wasn't going to be safe for the refugee to come to. And I'm putting a little twist on that on purpose. And if the people of Twin Falls think refugees are unsafe, I certainly, as somebody who is resettling a refugee, would not take them to a place where I felt the refugee himself was going to be unsafe.
Boise, Idaho. Please answer that.
Boise, Idaho has 3 refugee affiliates, and the program works there as equally as well as it does here. So the point is, if this was not a welcoming community, refugees wouldn't be coming here. It's been happening 30 years, frankly, very successfully.
Are you seeing other communities around the country where refugee programs are becoming more divisive like this, especially in light of what's going on with the European crisis, the unrest in the Middle East?
Sorry, I just hold this microphone for a while.
Hey, well, you flew a long way. We're going to make this worth your while.
I think especially for people who are opponents who are here tonight, and I know there's a few, there are other places, and it's not very hard to figure it out where they are. Spartanburg, South Carolina is a place where there are opponents for refugee resettlement. At the moment, I think probably that's about the only other community that we're seeing any kind of negative voice, if you will, or anti-refugee voice. There have been places in the past, Manchester, New Hampshire is one, Springfield, Massachusetts, Amarillo, Texas. We've gone out and we've done similar meetings in those places. Some of them have been with elected officials who have thought that the program is too much of a drain. I have to say, I think we're in a much better footing in those places. In Spartanburg, South Carolina, there's still a group of people who are opposed to resettlement, and we'll continue to have dialogue with them and help them understand how the program works. What I would say in South Carolina is we have very strong support from the governor, and we have a very strong support from about 25 Baptist churches that actually ask us to set up a program there. So it's a little bit of a confusing discussion because we have a lot of strong supporters in Spartanburg, and then we've got some who don't.
Once refugees arrive, is there a path to citizenship for them, or legally, what's their status? Can you walk through that in a little more detail?
So when a refugee arrives at the airport, at the port of entry, and goes through customs and immigration, they immediately have the right to work. And that's intentional because we want refugees to support themselves. Under law, they cannot become a legal permanent resident until 1 year upon arrival. So they can access a lot of programs, and certainly our program benefits, but they become an LPR, they can adjust status at year 1. And after 5 years in this country, like any other legal immigrant, they can apply for citizenship, which means taking the citizenship test and passing the additional security screening that happens with anybody who is trying to become a U.S. citizen. So it's not required to become a U.S. citizen, but certainly many refugees successfully pass the test and become citizens.
A follow-up question on that same card is, you talked about the screening process that they go through before they get here. Are there any kind of other checks on those folks once they arrive?
So the checks that happen, I think, once people arrive are at times when they adjust their status. So when they would adjust to become a legal permanent resident, the Department of Homeland Security, which has the authority for that, runs some of the same checks that we run overseas. And then when they would go to apply for citizenship, those same tests would be run. And it's, again, run under the authority of the Department of Homeland Security.
Mr. Pike, you talked a little bit about the crime rate for the refugee community in your opening remarks. I just got a card handed to me here. Wondering if you have any information about crimes against refugees in Twin Falls.
You know, what's interesting is when I looked at the information and started pulling the numbers, there were some interesting correlations. And this is a little bit of work in progress, but like I said, I'd be more than happy to share this with anyone here tonight. One of the things that I noticed is that in relationship, as I looked through the data and I looked at arrestees related to all these crimes that I mentioned before, the one consistent theme is that the refugees, and I need to be really clear tonight. Like I said, we don't identify individuals that we deal with, whether they're are you a refugee? It doesn't work that way. So there's just some broad categories. But one thing I noticed as I was going through this, that there was a very low percentage of unknowns, race unknown, race black, that we were dealing with and arresting. But on the victimization side, I noticed there was almost a 100% increase in some of these areas where refugees, or supposed refugees, if I'm going off the category of unknown, were victimized. A perfect example would be simple assault. So if I look at simple assault, I should get up, but I'm not going to. I'm going to try to do this sitting down. If I look at simple assault for 2014, so we arrested 92% of the people that we arrested were white. 3.5% were the other category of race. But when we look at victimization, under simple assault, you have about the same percentage on the white category for race, about 91%, but you're almost up to 7% on the unknown category for victimization. So I think there's a correlation that we're seeing, and it's something that, like I said, this is new to us because we really haven't looked at this information in this light. But now that we have the data in front of us, we'll explore it further.
Your latest hire on the police force is a refugee himself, and I think he joins 4 or 5 other officers who came through a refugee program in some form. Can you talk about the role that those refugee officers play on the police force?
You know, honestly, our officers that were refugees that work for us are incredible. And if you've had contact with them and you've dealt with them, you know what I'm talking about. They're patriotic. They're some of the most patriotic people I've ever met. They love America. They love the fact that they have an opportunity. They're proud to serve this community. As a matter of fact, when we swear them in or they get promoted, it's not unusual to have large groups of individuals joining us in council chambers for these events. It's a family event, and the family is very proud. One of the things that we've seen over the years with this, with the refugee population, is that, and this was mentioned earlier, these individuals have suffered tremendous atrocities at the hands of individuals that they should have been able to trust. So whether in some cases it was the military, or in other cases it was local law enforcement, tremendous corruption. And when they deal with us, the first couple of months, right, we're trying to build a connection. We're trying to show them that this is not from where they've come from. And that connection is really important. What has accelerated that connection is having Bosnian officers who can go out and can make an immediate connection with this population that's here in our community. And it's just been invaluable.
So it's probably no secret to anybody in this room that there's some folks who are trying to gather enough signatures to put a measure on ballots that would essentially force CSI to end its relationship with the refugee center, and in fact it would ban all refugee centers in Twin Falls County. The county prosecutor is well, more than indicated that he doesn't think that the way that that's worded right now is going to pass any kind of constitutional muster. But there have been folks wondering what would happen if the refugee center were ever to sever its ties with CSI. Would Twin Falls retain some kind of a refugee program in some other capacity, or what would happen in that scenario? Mike, you want to start? Or?
Well, yes, the information we've been provided is that as long as the community supports the refugee center and we have these model programs, somebody will come in and pick that up. I think that one of the advantages to the college run it is we hire very high quality people. We do provide good services, and it's a benefit to us. I mean, these people come on and they become our students, their children become our students, so it's kind of what CSI does. It's part of our community service mission statement.
Ken, you want to take a stand?
So refugee resettlement sites exist because communities want refugees. And this community has welcomed refugees for 30 years. So frankly, we're still going to have 60% of refugees who want to join family members. And I think all of us would support that. So, we would hope that there would be, if CSI for some reason no longer was affiliated with this agency, I guess it would be my hope that some other agency would pick it up in some other way. But if not, we would look at other opportunities and other welcoming communities in Idaho and certainly in the West.
Zayze, I have a question for you here on one of the cards, and it's related to a couple other cards, but I guess I'll put it generally. Can you talk a little bit about the companies that refugees go to work for once they come here, how they find those jobs, and what impact they're having on the labor force locally?
The truth about Twin Falls is there is jobs for refugees. I think Twin Falls has more jobs than people available to work. So that's where we found no struggle in trying to find people jobs. We do provide transportation for them to and from work, and that is a big plus for employers. Employers like that because the refugees will be there on time, and if there is even any issue, then we'll get the message immediately so we can take care of those issues immediately. The other thing that employers love about our refugees is because they tend to stay there for a long time. Now, I was talking to one employer, and I specifically asked him, why do you hire refugees? And this is what he said. He said, well, if I get two people, one is an American born and a refugee. Now, you would think that the refugee who doesn't speak English or speaks limited English would be harder to train, would be harder to give instructions to perform the job. And then you would think that employers would hire that American-born first. But for them, they're looking at productivity. Who is going to produce more? Who is going to stay for a long time so they can invest the training and the resources on that person who is going to stay for a long time?
So I think everyone's heard stories about, a refugee might be a scientist or a doctor or have an advanced degree in the country that they're coming from and not have the certifications required to practice in those same fields in this country.